Guys, I want to thank the sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com, my friend Cody Nelson, the glassing guru, the optics authority. He's the optics manager at GoHunt.com. If you have any interest in buying optics or have any glassing questions, whether it be tripods, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, range finders, anything to do with glassing, give Cody a call, 702-847-8747. That's extension 2, or you can email him at optics@gohunt.com. You can also send him a text or call him on his cell phone at 602-399-3699. Guys, right now at GoHunt.com Insider, you can take advantage of the free trial. Go to GoHunt.com/JScott. You're going to be able to take advantage of a free trial of the Insider. GoHunt is always adding more value for their Insider members. They've now added real 3D maps as a part of Insider for no additional cost. What an incredible value. Very soon they're going to have their mobile app up as well. Go to GoHunt.com/JScott and sign up for a free trial. If you're already an Insider member, it's automatically part of your Insider membership. And you can just go to the Maps tab up at the top once you sign in as an Insider. I also want to thank KUIU Ultralight Hunting. That's the gear that I wear on all of my hunts. To find out more, you can go to KUIU.com, KUIU.com. They're a direct-to-consumer company. They sell everything off of the KUIU.com website. I also do a lot of question and answer on my Instagram where I'm answering questions about guys wanting to know about gear about KUIU, so tune into my Instagram. I want to thank KUIU for their sponsorship. I also want to thank Phonescope.com. Use the JScott20 promo code. You're going to get a 10% discount on all orders. And I want to thank AllElk.com, home of the Bugle Mule. Use the JSO10 to save 10% on all orders. The Bugle Mule attaches to your bugle, and it's a great little carrier that holds 3 elk calls right there on your bugle tube, and I can't wait to use it this season. Again, thanks to all the sponsors of my podcast.
Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Will Primos. For those people out there listening, if they're a hunter, most everybody has heard of Primos, Primos Hunting. The name Will Primos, he's a hunting icon, and he's just an incredible man. I've had the fortune of meeting him on several occasions, and I actually got to spend some time with him this last September on an elk hunt, and nice to meet him and his lovely wife, Mary, and just a fantastic person. We've got Will Primos on the line. Will, how you doing?
I'm fine, Jay. Am I going to have to live up to all that?
Yeah, well, you've pretty much solidified your name and reputation in the industry, and I gotta say, I appreciate, as a kid watching videos and, getting true inspiration of hunting through some of the different things that your company has provided, and quite honestly, your personality on the Truth Series videos and on the TV show and stuff. So for that, I give you major kudos for that.
You're mighty kind. An old gentleman, one time I paid him a compliment, and he looked at me and he said, "Boy, I don't ever mind nobody lying to me as long as it makes me feel good." So thank you, Jay, for making me feel good.
Sounds good, buddy. One of the things I wanted to cover here in this episode with you mainly is your love of hunting, the start of your company and the creation of your company, and maybe even some of the trials and tribulations of the company. And then, I've got some questions here, but I want to talk to you about elk hunting and your love of elk hunting, and how all of that has changed over the years, or has it stayed the same? And, from my interpretation of spending some time with you this September, it seems the passion of hunting burns in you as much as, watching you early on the video. So that was actually really nice to see that you seem to be as fired up about it now as you were as a kid. Will, how did you get your start hunting, and what do you remember hunting first and such as a boy?
Well, I was very lucky to be exposed to a family, an extended family, aunts, uncles, daddy, that hunted. And so from the time Daddy doesn't know why. My daddy was a very hardworking, my daddy's still living, he's 90 years old, very healthy, great guy. Mama's 88. They're just wonderful people. And I was very lucky to have such incredible, endearing parents, God-fearing Christian parents who gave me incredible values. So I've used that all my life and still do. And I fear the Lord, I love the Lord, and I want to serve Him, and so we all look as we grow up for what are we going to do for a living, and I just took this passion. My daddy said early on, I started to tell you a minute ago, that, where did you get this desire for hunting? I was just obsessed. I played baseball, minor league, the only time I ever played. I played one season, and I was a very, very aggressive catcher, and I was going to Little League the next year, and from minor league, and the team, Mississippi Materials was the name of the team, that came and approached the coach and said, we want Will on our team. And I said, I don't believe he's going to play next year. And they said, oh, okay, well, why not? I said, I don't know, you have to ask him. So they came and approached me, and I told them, I said, I'm not playing next year. And they said, well, why is that? I said, because this takes away from all my time to fish. and that's a true story, and my mother tells it too. She was standing there when that went on, and she allowed me to make that decision. She didn't tell me I had to play baseball. We didn't have as many sports as the kids have today. I'm 63 years old. I was born in 1952. So when at that time around 1960, when I first got to be exposed to whitetail hunting, I mean, we just had a lot of opportunity around the house with small game, squirrels, rabbits, and I religiously chased them. We had my own little lake there where we lived, and I had a little red radio flyer red wagon, and I would fill that didn't have very high size, but I would fill that thing up with brim and go home and sit down, and I would clean every one of them, and they would out. That's what I wanted for my meal. I mean, I don't know how all that got started, but for some reason I had that desire. The first time I ever went hunting, I can actually remember it, I was probably about 6, and my cousin Jimmy, who works with me now he came to work in the 80s with me here. Jimmy's 68. He'll be 68 this week. But he took me hunting for a blackbird, and he had this CO2 fired pellet gun. It was powerful. You used a tube to screw onto it to fill up the gun, and so I shot me a blackbird, and I was so excited. And Jimmy said, "Now you're gonna eat him. You've killed him. You're gonna eat him." And I said, "Okay." So we built a fire right there in the woods, and I breasted out the blackbird. He showed me how, and we roasted that thing, and I ate him. A little rubbery. I remember it being a little rubbery, but it was great. I was putting my own food on the table, and I was all excited about it.
That's a great story. That's a fantastic story. So really, hunting and fishing as a kid just burned a passion in your heart and led to you doing other things. But once the baseball, they came for you for baseball, you knew that it would cut into your hunting and fishing.
Yeah. Well, I graduated from high school in 1970. Went to the Air Force. It was the Vietnam era. Very, very difficult time for many young men. The draft. Most people today, the kids today, they have known nothing about the draft. I think that's one of the things wrong with the country is that we depend on a volunteer, army, and so you knew you were going to serve in some capacity. And at that point, Vietnam was a loser, and everybody knew it. and we weren't there to win. And there were so many people getting killed. I think 54,000 total got killed. And so I joined the Air National Guard, and I did the aptitude and that kind of thing. And the guy came to me and said, well, here are your choices. And the second choice was a marksmanship instructor, because my aptitude fit that, and they had an opening for aptitude for that particular job. And so I said, well, what do I do? It says, well, you'll go to basic training in Lackland. You will also stay at Lackland for your school, for marksmanship instructor school. And then you'll come back here and you will maintain the range, and you will make sure all the pilots and co-pilots here know how to defend themselves. And you will train them to shoot M16s, grenade launchers, 38 revolvers, 45 caliber pistols. And part of their training, so they understand guns, is to shoot the M1 Garand. And so I maintained the vault, maintained all of the guns, and taught them how to shoot. And it was wonderful, as I did all that. And I went on and graduated from a private school. I started out at Mississippi State and Ole Miss, and I minored in biology. I wanted to study forestry, but I got sidetracked chasing girls and trying to grow up and all that kind of stuff, and ended up staying at home. My family was in the restaurant business, so I worked in the restaurants to fuel my budget-driven passions, one of which was skeet shooting. And I was, as a matter of fact, in 1964, I was the junior state champion in Mississippi. And this is kind of a funny story. I was the only entry in that division, so I won by default.
And won by a landslide.
I won by a landslide. But I worked with the family, because I could get my schooling done and work hours that, like, their restaurants, some of them they operated all the time. There were 5 of them, and we were very close, big family. There's aunts and uncles, 4 uncles, and my daddy and my granddaddy, and anyway, and that's where I went in life to make a living. But I started making turkey calls. I started selling them in 1976. And just couldn't find what I really liked, and I developed a process, and it was just kind of a hobby, but it quickly became a business. And one thing led to another, and I said, well, dadgummit, I might be able to get out of the restaurant business, because the restaurant business is confining. That is one heck of a retail occupation to have, especially independent restaurateur. And
Will, what were your jobs in the restaurant business? I mean, were you everything from a dishwasher to what actually were you doing?
Yes, that's part of the work ethic. You did it all, because who knows who's not going to come to work that day. But we opened and closed. There was the Primos that opened and closed every restaurant and controlled the cash receipts and making the deposits. And so you worked doing that, but if you got too busy and the staff couldn't handle it, you waited on tables. If you needed to assist the staff in expediting and getting the dishes off the line and out to the tables, you did that. If the hostess was sick that day, you hosted. So if you needed to mop the floor, you mopped the floor. If you needed to clean the toilet, you cleaned the toilet. I mean, and that's part of the work ethic, and I think that's what I was taught by my family. I wasn't above doing anything, and still am not. And I love people. I love seeing people be successful. As I got into the call business, the first big success that really saw this thing might have some light at the end of the tunnel was an audio tape. There were no CDs, there were no DVDs. It was audio, or VHSs weren't even born yet. And I did an audio tape and explained how to use a turkey call, and I actually recorded live hunts in the woods. And that thing was a huge success. It helped us sell more calls. And the next step in 1986 was video. And it was a timing issue. If video hadn't come along, I could have never promoted the company the way I did. But I'm a perfectionist, and I wanted things done a certain way, and it took a long time. But by 1990, we had over 100 employees, and we're growing like crazy.
That's fantastic. Will, doubling back to something you had said about, working a family business, pretty much doing every job, what can a new business owner and or the younger generation today learn from the mentality of, don't quit your day job and continue doing what you're doing, but doesn't that force you to work 24/7? Can you talk a little bit about, that mentality and why that's allowed you to succeed?
I can. I'll take that a step further because I recently had to give a speech, and this became part of my speech because I was speaking to a lot of graduating kids moving from college into the workplace, and some high school people too, but mainly they were business people and college kids that were fixing to be graduating. And I've met many kids. Have you finished school? Yeah, I finished school. So you got a job? You working? No, I hadn't found what I want to do. I just don't know really what I'm passionate about. Oh, okay. Well, how you paying your bills? Well, I'm still living with mom and daddy, and they're still helping me. And that really disturbs me. And I got kicked out. I was given a guidelines and said, okay, here's the window. So if you don't get this done by this date, you're on your own. And so I had very strict upbringing, but it made a man out of me at an earlier age. And one of the things that I realized was that I had to make a living. So when I got back from the Air Force, went back to college, got my college education finally, graduated in 1974, I was fixing to get out of school. And I really wanted to hunt for a living. And how do you do that? And does that pay the bills? So I went to work for my family, and we had one restaurant that was absolutely huge. We had, I don't know how many, over 125 employees during the peak Christmas season and stuff like that. But we had 13 banquet rooms. It was the only facility that didn't have a hotel and associated with it that had banquet facilities. So we entertained the Kiwanis Club and the Rotary Club and a lot of other organizations who met on a regular basis. And then we'd have dances for the Calliope Club. It's an older group of people in Jackson, Mississippi that had a big dance once a year and stuff like that. Well, I really didn't want to do that. But yet I was taught no matter what you do, if it's digging a ditch or whatever you dig the best ditch. And if you agree to work for a certain wage, whether you like the salary, the wage or not, if you agree to do it, then you owe it to do it the right way and to do it the best of your ability. And you also anticipate problems. So when you're doing something, don't take a shortcut because it's just going to give a problem to somebody else down the road. So I remembered all those things. But what happened was I did those things not really wanting to do them, but I did them because that was my job, and I took it seriously. But I began to meet people that I would have never met otherwise because I'd been in school, been doing all that kind of thing. But here I was meeting the business leaders in this area, and they opened doors for me. One man was the biggest industrialist in the Southeast, that man named Warren Hood. He was eating dinner with his wife on a Saturday one day, and I was waiting on tables because we were short of help. And I've known Mr. Hood, went to school with his children, with his the same age as me, so I've known who he was and what he was. But he had 18,000 acres of Mississippi rolling pine and hardwoods in south of Jackson. And he says, look, I'm covered up with turkeys. You come hunt with me. Come on anytime you want. And that's where I did my recordings. And then we'd ride around and he'd tell me stories about his business endeavors. He started over 50 companies, extremely, extremely successful. And so these openings, another man was Bill Walker, that opened his door to me. And they gave me opportunity I would have never had any other way. So my message to the young people is, no matter what, pay your way, get a job, and it will open the door that you never would have been able to see was open for you by what you did, by who you met, by opportunity that you didn't know was going to be there. So if you sit around waiting for this passion to come up, it may not come till later in life. My daddy, he worked his fanny off. He didn't retire until he was 76. And he raised 3 boys, sent them to college, took care of his family. He's a Depression child. He's a World War II vet. And He's part of that generation that is so great. But he taught me that I was going to have to make decisions, and the decisions I made were going to be so important. I love the Jeremiah Johnson movie that was put out in 1972. It was directed by Sidney Pollack. Stars Robert Redford. It's a story about a mountain man. You know the story.
Yeah.
And it's fiction, but it's built on some lore and some nonfiction of the mountain man history. But there's a song that repeats itself throughout the theme of the music, and the song's words are, "The way that you wander is the way that you choose. The day that you tarry is the day that you lose. Sunshine or thunder, a man will always wonder." So it's just a wonderful, message that even other people have gotten. But doing nothing is not the answer. Do something, even if it's not what you think you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible point to make, that even in a situation where, people think they're in a dead end, if they change their attitude and realize that the opportunities might be right in front of them, and that they need to seize those opportunities, although it might not be the way they think that it's going to go down, some of the best opportunities might be staring them right in the face. With that being said, Will, you talk about, you did some of your first recordings. Talk about some of, what was your intention on getting those recordings? Did you want to, get the very best sound that you could, or was it more from an entertainment standpoint as far as trying to sell the calls, or was it more from a standpoint of wanting to be precise and get the exact sounds of those turkeys?
It was all the above that you just said. First off, you wanted it to be accurate, but I kept going I'd make calls, and then I'd go to an outdoor show, and I'd have a little 10-foot booth, and I'd put my little calls on a card table, and I'd sit there with a little sign that said Primos, and I would talk to people, and they would go, "Look, I got turkeys on my land, but what do I do? How do I go about it?" And so I began to see that people who didn't have a mentor, didn't have an uncle or somebody to teach them. I had a man named Buck Dearman, who was a friend of my uncle's, who knew the most about turkey hunting. He took me under his wing, and so he went and sat with me. And so I'd sit there with that Lynch box call, and he'd say, "Okay, wait a minute. He's still in the limb. Wait. Let him fly down. When you think he's on the ground, listen for his gobble. It'll sound different on the ground. And when he gobbles on the ground, he's ready. Now, let him know you're here. Just cluck and yelp at him. Don't be just take his temperature." And so old Buck taught me how to take a turkey's temperature and gave him the scenario. So when people would walk up to me, I realized, that's the same for everybody else. So the goal of my recordings was to let people actually hear the sounds I was making and the response of the gobbler. And I would narrate it, try to. And I hired the best sound guy that I could find in this area. And he used what at that time was called a Swedish Nagra, Nagra recorder, if the way I remember it. And it was reel to reel, and the reels were bigger than the surface they spun on. So he would have to open it up, take out the reels, and he's making a little noise and putting them in place. So it was very difficult. I thought I'd go out the first day, I'm Will Primos. Yeah. I can kill a turkey anytime I want. I mean, I think it took us all season to finally get one hunt. It was ridiculous. You added these other elements that make it hard to move, hard to make the plays you need to make, and getting the sound and everything. It was very difficult. As soon as I had that, I went to the studio, and I got lucky. There was a guy, Wolf Stevenson, that I'd known. I had met him when I was 16 years old at a dance in Jackson, and I remembered him, and he owned Malico Recording Studios. And they recorded all the blues and soul of all the Southern artists. And so I went to him and I said, "Look, can I hire you to put this tape?" "Yeah, we can do it after hours. I won't charge you." And this guy was like, "You got to be kidding me." I said, "I won't pay you something." Take me to dinner. So the studio would close down sometimes 9, 10 o'clock when the artists would quit doing their deal because they like to work late at night. And we'd work till 2 and 3 in the morning. And back then, it wasn't digital. It was all on tape. And you've heard some of you might have heard the expression, well, that'll hit the edit floor. Well, they were actually taking the tape with a razor blade and locating the ah. So he took out, every time I said ah, and I would probably 1,000 of them because I didn't know what I was going to say the next word. I was going, So he'd take his hands and he'd roll the disc back and forth, and go, and he'd find it, and then he would take a razor blade and cut it out and tape the back of it. It was incredible. So that was the edit process.
That is unbelievable.
It is.
And Will, at that point in time, I mean, it wasn't like you had a bunch of money. I mean, you were putting everything you had into this deal, and there were probably some that looked at you and said, "You're going to do what?" And did you take that as fuel to fire and just knew that you were going to follow your passion and knew that you wanted what you wanted to do, and you didn't let the distraction get to you? Talk about a little bit about that.
Well, you know, some of that is true. First off, I'm a realist. I'm going to look at reality. I might have a desire and a dream, and I'm going to, as long as nothing stops me cold from trying to reach that dream, I'm going to try. So, yes, people said, "You're going to do what?" And I remember one guy told me, he says, number one, Olt's got the waterfowl market tied up. Ben Lee and Quaker Boy, and they were blowing and going back then. They weren't as big as they became, and then we passed them later. But they were everything. Loman was everything back then. And I said, yeah, but they're not doing it this way, and I think I have a better idea. But here's the deal. I didn't quit my day job. I hired a guy going to school, and he got out of school every day at 12 o'clock, and he would come over. I had a recording machine set up, take the orders. I was advertising in Turkey Call magazine. That Turkey Call started in 1975 in WTF, and they had a little, just a little 1 inch by half inch little ad, Primos Yelpers for sale, call or write. That's all it was. You didn't even know what I was doing. And I learned. But yeah, I did not quit my day job. And I think finally in 1988, when I quit the day job and went full time, I didn't draw a salary. I know this for a fact. I didn't draw a salary for 10 years. My wife supported me. And up until that point, I think when I quit in 88, I had like 26 employees. And I had them working at my house. I couldn't afford at that point. I didn't have enough momentum built up, so I couldn't afford to go spend a bunch of money on rent every month. So I converted the living room, the garage, every aspect of my house was one part of the business. I'd even hired a head of marketing back then, and I had him take over the living room. And that's where everybody came to work. And
I think that's
what you do. That's just what you do.
Yeah. It's definitely entrepreneurs, American, that's just how you do it, and that is an unbelievable story. And I think it shows your work ethic. I think it shows your commitment to the company and commitment to the belief that you had in yourself and in the company. And it sounds like it was an all-in deal. While you didn't quit your day job, you were fully invested in this your way of the future and your idea that, there was nobody going to talk you out of that. And I think that's a huge, important thing for people to remember is, once you get started down your path, it's going to be bumpy along the way, but, you keep plowing forward if you believe in your dream.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of sacrifices, to make. And I never got that big, huge sledgehammer in the forehead brick wall that said, this is over. I kept getting little encouragements. Some of the biggest encouragements for me were people that said, hey, I can't believe how that turkey responded. I can't believe how that deer responded. I got to a point, and I forget the date. It was somewhere in the middle 80s or somewhere around there. I wanted to go and learn about elk. I didn't know nothing about elk. I'd been seeing elk and seeing mule deer at Estes Park, and when I was in 1967, I went and took a little vacation there with my family, And I knew I'd come back to be a part of that because I hiked up and fished in a little beaver pond and caught cutthroats, and I was just enthralled by that at 15 years old. Well, I went and got these two guys who had killed the number 1 and 2 world record elk. They were both from your state of Arizona, and they were the Elmer, Jay and Jeff Elmer.
Yeah.
You remember them?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, from Cottonwood, I believe, yeah.
I flew them to Jackson, Mississippi, took them into my house, and we sat down, and I said, I know nothing about elk. I want to pay you a royalty. Help me design elk calls. Well, little did I know, they really didn't know that much about calling. They were good, and they knew a ton more than I did, but they had killed the elk on water holes and had located these big monster elk, And sometimes the bigger elk are a lot harder to call unless you catch them just right. But anyway, they were a great part of that, and then that didn't work well for them or us, and so it went away. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it myself. So I started going out west and staying a month, and that first time I went was 88, and I started staying a month and watching everything transform from early September when nothing was really happening as the bugling time grew, and trying to understand public ground and all the things it took to understand elk in different parts of the West. And finally one day, killed one, and we finally figured it out that if you're going to run a camera and you're going to call elk, they're going to come into you, and you're standing there calling, and the camera's close enough to see you. They come in there, and they usually stop about 75 yards, depending on the terrain, and they stand there and look till they see the elk that's calling to them, be it a bull or a cow, or they make sure they stay high on a bull because they don't want to get in a fight and not having an advantage. And we realized we needed to take their attention totally away from us. So I'll call until a certain point, and there's a caller behind us, and that is what turned it around. We've killed over 200 elk on video and shared it with the elk hunting world all these years. I forget how many it is now, but it's well over 200. And we do that, and the number one thing that'll really make it better for you is to have a caller behind you 75 to 100, 150 yards. And it totally changes the whole surprise deal on elk.
That's awesome. And so early on, once you finally killed an elk, you figured out that having someone behind you was a key. To this day, I see on your videos that's a huge tactic that you guys use. I think people can learn if they have a buddy with them, the fadeaway tactic as well. I like where the caller that's behind you may actually kind of just ease back once he's, the elk, you've gotten the elk's attention. They ease away, and the elk thinks that they're leaving.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Exactly. You hit on a perfect topic there. What do you think it is in the elk senses that, doesn't want to bring them to 5 yards, even though a lot of your videos are close by? What is it that you think it's just them being wary of the call because it's not 100% perfect, or do you think it's just in their nature?
Well, I think every once in a while you'll have one that's just crazy, and he's usually a satellite bull that's just so worked up, and he'll run you over no matter what. But generally, the bigger bulls or the bigger satellites, they're used to approaching other elk, and sometimes bulls are silent, and I think it is a defensive measure on the elk's part, because if he runs charging up in there and does not figure out what's going on, he can get slammed from the side, and he can easily get hurt by another elk. And so he wants to size it up and know what's going on. So when he gets to the point that always before he's been able to see the elk that's doing the calling and see what's going on, he'll stop and look. Yeah. And so it's that 75-yard deal. I had a guy call for me one year. Got a hunt on a real nice place, and this guy went with me, and he was going to be our caller. And okay, so he wouldn't get more than about 20, 25 yards away. And I said, look, here's the deal, sir. I don't want to tell you. You've been calling elk a long time. You know what you're doing. But here's the deal. If you can see me, you're too close. Mm-hmm. Because that's the biggest mistake most people make. They want to see. They want to be a part. Well, if you want to be a part, you better back up, because ain't nothing going to be a part of if you don't back up.
Yeah. And Will, what is it about archery elk hunting? I know you like to rifle hunt and muzzleloader, but I know you have a true passion for archery elk hunting. Talk to me a little bit about that love of the archery, and is it the close encounter, or what is it that you really like about archery elk hunting?
Yeah, it really is the close encounter, about being able to see them being themselves and going through their mating ritual and being that close. I killed a elk, the first elk I ever killed with a gun. I killed in 2003, and it was a Harper's Ferry reproduction flintlock that was the gun that Lewis and Clark were said to have taken on the Corps of Discovery. And I had it commissioned and built, learned to shoot it, and shot a beautiful elk with it. And that was the first one. I shot him at 11 yards. And just to finish that story real quickly, about 3 months after that, sometime in the early 2004, somebody found some documents that showed that gun was not the gun that Lewis and Clark took on the expedition, that they had been commissioned and they had been ordered by Jefferson, by the money that he gave the guys to get ready for the expedition, but they were not able to get the guns built in time. So that was not the gun that they took. But I was there in spirit with the gun I thought they took. And then the next elk that I killed, I didn't kill one with a gun for many years until last year was 14, so probably the year 2000, somewhere around in there. I loved the history of the Shiloh Sharps gun, Sharps, and the 45-70 and the other gun calibers that they shot buffalo with back then. So I got one of those guns. It was a Shiloh Sharps reproduction made in Big Timber, Montana. And I took that gun on a hunt in southern Colorado and killed an elk with it at 275 yards. It was a fun hunt. The scope, I had a period scope built by Montana Vintage Arms Company in Belgrade, Montana. The scope's, it's not more than an inch in diameter, and it's 28 inches long. And it's an old 6-power scope. The scope, when you shoot it, it's on rails and it goes forward so it won't hit you in the eye because there's not enough eye relief, and the gun kicks back. So you actually return the scope to its original position every time. And the gun, which really the first sniper gun, at 100 yards, I can shoot a hole in a piece of paper, and the next shot, I can touch that hole at 100 yards with a bench rest with that gun. The gun is incredibly accurate. Anyway, so I killed that elk with a gun, and then my company was acquired and purchased and is part of a larger conglomerate of brands, 30-something brands, one of which is Savage Arms, which I'd never shot a Savage. And so I got a Savage and went hunting with a Savage 2 years ago. Used a .308. I love the triggers on those guns. They're incredible. And it's kind of cool. You shoot an elk with one of them things and they fall down right there. You don't have to go track them down. So that's pretty cool. And then last year I killed one with a .300 at 225 yards. And it was a neat experience, but I love the bow hunting. I shoot a Matthews, and I just love bow hunting. I love being up close. But the bow hunting, there's so much more to it. The physical part, the time of year part, watching the fall hit the Rockies, the aspens change, and just enjoying that part of God's creation. It's just overwhelming to see all that. So I go back to the beginning we were talking. I feel so lucky to have been exposed to wildlife and the places that they call home at an early age. And as I grew up and began to see how much habitat was the answer. It's one reason I love the National Wild Turkey Federation so much. Yeah. As they realized that they had fulfilled their mission, which was turkeys everywhere, they looked at it and they go, wait a minute, we really need to examine this. What is our mission now that we've fulfilled our mission. And the mission is save the habitat, save the hunt, because everybody wants to take away our hunting rights, and you don't have anything to hunt if you don't have habitat. And I love the people in Arizona who go out and build water tanks and take care of elk and provide the habitat that they need to thrive. So I call it the places that wildlife call home. So I love being a part of that.
Yeah, and you can tell in your videos. I just watched the latest Primos Truth the Elk video, and it was fantastic. One of the things that always amazes me with you, Will, is on every video it seems as though you're able to capture the emotion. And knowing you personally, I mean, and being around you, that is the guy you are. Can you speak a little bit about some of the times on these videos when, you can tell that the emotion of the situation or the realness of the situation almost takes over you, and, you just go into your, appreciation. Talk to me about the realism of what you feel in your heart when that moment hits.
Well, hunting with a camera person who's running the camera, I've always wanted the camera guy to be a part of the hunt. They're not a fly on the wall. They're actually there. They're helping in the process. So you're becoming a family of friends. My wife gets to go on one elk hunt with me a year. I usually go on 2 or 3 a year, and she goes on one, and she's called up the last 17 elk that I've killed. And to be there with her, to have her see and be a part of it, she says it ain't hard to call up an elk, that all women should be able to do it because they know exactly what a man's thinking. So that may be true.
There's a lot of truth to that.
There probably is a lot of truth to that. But one time we were, I was standing there and I went, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of elk behind me. And, probably 50 yards behind me, I could hear feet, I could hear rocks rolling, and, I'm going, oh my gosh. And so I just froze, and I had quit calling the elk that way out there. I usually call when they get within 150 yards, but he never got that close, and I just shut up because I didn't want to get the elk all over on top of me. I wondered where Mary was. And so I hunt's over, we're talking. I said, did you hear all those elk behind me? Did you see them? She goes, that was me. I said, what were you doing? She says, well, I picked up rocks and acted like elk walking and started, just acting like elk, being elk. I said, well, how'd you learn that? It says, I watch it all the time. So,
that's great.
when the time does hit, I am an emotional person, but I've learned to just forget about the camera. And for the most part, there are moments when you do remember it, but for the most part, I tell the camera guy, either you're running the camera and you get it, but I'm not redoing it. If you catch me in an emotional moment and I allow you to share that with the public, that's fine, but I can't redo it.
Yeah.
This isn't Hollywood, and that's one of the Primos.
Not genuine,
Yeah, it's one of the Primos trademarks is this ain't Hollywood. Yeah. And it's not. I remember one time I killed a whitetail. It was a big moment. It was a big whitetail, and I was so just to be there. And I'm with this person in the tree, and so I just turned to him and I said, "Can you just turn that off a minute?" And he turns the camera off and looks at me like, "What I do?" I said, "Just let me be alone for a minute." And I climbed down and I went and found that whitetail on my own. Because that's what we got to do. That's what you, Jay, and Will got to do before we were followed around with cameras. We were just enjoying God's creation, enjoying this moment of putting food on the table and the respect you had for all of this. And, we're seeing all kinds of wildlife in addition to the game that we're after. But we wouldn't see it any other way if we didn't go there and do it. And the same thing for waterfowl hunting and the green timber and the beautiful flooded grass areas of Mississippi. Same thing for whitetail hunting. Same thing for all of it, for turkey hunting. It's just a time you get to get out there and slow down and take a breath of the fresh air. I call them little greens, but right now it's fixing to start, spring's fixing to come again, and all the little greens are going to bud out, and life is going to be renewed, and God's plan is going to be fulfilled, and the mating ritual of the wild turkey, all the songbirds are going to go on. And just a minute ago while we were talking, I was looking out my window, and there was a bluebird out there. And I love y'all's western bluebirds. But our bluebird, the eastern bluebird, is so beautiful. And if you don't appreciate it and are a part of are not a part of protecting that, then I think you need to re-examine the reason you're doing it. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has a great mission and is doing a great job. The Mule Deer Foundation, National Wild Turkey Federation, Ducks Unlimited, all of those organizations are important to the future of hunting. And if we don't recognize that and don't fight for it, we could lose it. Because when you, as Thomas Jefferson said, when you get as urban as Europe, you will become as corrupt as Europe. And it's happening to us. I mean, people are taking away our trapping rights, and they vote without ever having to understand the world that's out there.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff, Will. You couldn't have nailed it on, hit the nail on the head any sharper with those last statements for sure. Man, I want to let you know how much I appreciate you being with us. And in conclusion, I'd like to talk to you about the 2015 turkey season and what you've got as far as a forecast in Mississippi, and are you going to be hunting some other places? Give me a little rundown on what you have in front of you and maybe some of the conditions. Is it droughty, or is it, has it been a cold winter? What's going on down there?
We've had a great winter. Mississippi's winters are dependent on the strength of the highs and lows. The lows coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. We're about 3.5 hours from the coast. So that affects us, and that creates the moisture. That's why Mississippi has a high rainfall. I want to say our average rainfall across the state's over 60 inches. So we're having a wet spring right now. The season will be great in some areas and not so good in some areas, but overall it'll be wonderful. We had a decent hatch last year. Last year I didn't go anywhere outside the state. This year I'm going to hunt here at home. I'm going to hunt some other places around here that you know, and it's always fun to hunt places that you know, because when he gobbles, you go, he's on the other side of that creek. I better cross the creek. I mean, those are good things that to know. They help you make it easy for the gobbler to come to you. But I'm going to go to southern Colorado in May. I'm going to hunt New Mexico too. The Miriams of the West are beautiful. I had one in northern New Mexico, right below Wheeler Peak. I killed him at 10,500 feet, and he was with a Jake, and we hunted him. He was a very hard-headed gobbler. Somebody says Miriams are stupid. They're nuts. They can be very smart. But I named this turkey Poncho, and his buddy was Lefty. And so we were after Poncho and Lefty, and the fifth day we finally killed him, and killed Poncho. And he was a trophy Miriam. But I look forward to seeing that. When I shot that turkey, Poncho, there was snow in the background on the north side of the hill there, and that hadn't thawed out yet, hadn't melted. So I look forward to being in your part of the world this spring.
Awesome. Well, I wish you the best. And when does your season start here in Mississippi? What day does it start this year?
It starts Monday, the 16th.
Okay. So you're just about.
Youth season was this past weekend. Youth weekend. Mm-hmm.
Good. Well,
it's just a little early. I mean, it's a late lingering winter. We've had a good winter, and our winters, it might stay below freezing for 2 days, 3 days, but generally if you have a 20-degree morning, it's going to get up to 40 or 45 that day. So we don't have the winters like they have in the Northeast and some parts of the West. Doesn't stay frozen.
Sure. Well, I wish you the best there in Mississippi and on your adventures out west. And it was great to see you in Nashville at the NWTF. And also, thank you for that box call. You sent me a box cutter after the elk hunt. I'll cherish that forever. You signed it, and that's going to I'm going to use it, but it's always going to go in a special place for me. And
you see, when I sent it to you, it's probably worth $50. But when I signed it, the value was lowered to $5.
A depreciating asset.
Huh? Exactly.
Not in my book. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you coming on here and talking with us, and wish you the best on your turkey hunts and your elk hunts next year. And God bless you, and thanks for doing all that you've done for our hunting heritage. And tell Miss Mary hello. It was great to get to know her last September, and we'll be chatting at you, and just have a great season, and we'll be talking at you.
Well, thank you. Take care. And you going after the ghouls this year?
Yep, we're going to do, I start every year in California with my nephews for Rio Grandes, and then we've got some Arizona Merriam's hunts here, and then I'll finish up 2 weeks in Mexico guiding Gould's turkey hunters the 1st through the 15th. So should be another fantastic year, and have to get you down sometime to hunt a Gould's if you haven't already got one.
Yeah, my luck, I'll end up in some Mexican jail.
Well, you better brush up on your Spanish then.
I'd have a lot of brushing up to do.
Sounds good, Mr. Will. We'll take care, and congrats with all your successes, and we look forward to seeing more videos, and keep up the good work.
You're mighty kind. Thank you, Jake.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that was awesome, getting to spend some good quality time with Mr. Will Primos of Primos Hunting Calls. I've been a big admirer of Will's for many years, and it was just awesome to have him on the show. I want to thank our listeners for supporting us and giving us good ratings on iTunes. And if you have some feedback and comments, please put them on iTunes. And if you have any questions or comments of the show and you'd like to contact me directly, you can email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com.